everyone. My name is Kandyce Young, and I work on all things PCI DSS. So I want to take you on a journey with what's new for PCI DSS and why we added some of those things. But first, let's level set. PCI DSS version 4.0 came out in March 2022, and it will retire in December 31st, 2024. It included about 60 brand new requirements. PCI DSS version 4.0.1 was released this past June 2024, and it included quite a few clarifications and some minor adjustments made in response to the evolving needs of our stakeholder community. I will talk about some of those notable changes today. But PCI DSS controls, we like to think of them as they are a foundation for a multi-layered defense-in-depth approach to security, designed to protect the most valuable assets we have, protecting payment data. But it's also very similar to the way that we protect our very own homes and the critical assets we have within our homes, ourselves, our families, our pets, maybe even heirlooms. We've got doors at the entrance. We have windows to prevent bad weather from getting in. We have shared spaces. And then we also have personal spaces for our own personal use. And for special things, we may even have cabinet locks or motion sensors around those. So this is that layered approach to securing our assets. And we'd like to think of securing payment data in the very same way. And with the evolution of Internet of Things or IoT devices, smart devices, we have new connectivity to things that we haven't previously had. For example, they now have fridges with screens on the front where you can click and get groceries delivered directly to your fridge without even having to leave your home. Now, certainly, yes, that increases ease of access, but there's more potential for some emerging threats that you must manage as well. But it's this innovation, this type of technological advancement that was baked into PCI DSS version 4.0.1. And a lot of that is thanks to the data that we received from our global stakeholder community through our request for comment period that Deanne just mentioned. So keep this in mind as we begin our journey through the elements of PCI DSS. And we hope that it encourages organizations to get started now. But for organizations that are already going, we hope that it encourages you to think of these requirements in new and different ways. So requirement 1, network security controls. We know that it supports virtualization technologies and innovative ways to segment our environments. We've got service meshes, software-defined networking. The goal is really to prevent direct external access from getting into our internal trusted systems. We actually just published a special interest group guidance document called PCI DSS Scoping and Segmentation Guidance for Modern Network Architectures. And it includes a variety of new modern network architectures that you can use to help segment and secure your environments. Requirement 3 is about protecting payment account data. So in addition to requiring keeping data storage at a minimum and not storing sensitive authentication post-authorization, there is a new control to prevent the copy and relocation of PAN. And there are some remote access technologies that can perform this function, like virtual desktops. And there are some different settings that you can maneuver to eliminate that copy or relocation for certain role types. But PCI DSS also includes innovative ways to secure stored PAN. Stakeholders told us that disk level or partition level encryption works in new ways now. So PCI DSS version 4.0.1 includes a minor clarification to ensure that encrypted PAN is only decrypted for those that require their use. So you don't have more access to PAN than you need to perform your job function. This control represents the evolution of stored critical data assets. Requirement 4 is about protecting data in transit. So there's a new requirement that ensures that certificates used to protect PAN in transit, they're confirmed as valid, not expired, and not revoked. And verifying that these certificates are trusted helps to ensure the integrity of that secure connection. So be sure to work with your development team and review source code to make sure that that connection is rejected if the certificate is bad. I mean, I like to think of it as if you're sending a package to somebody that's very important, you take extra precautions to make sure that the right person receives it at the right time, very much like these certificates do. Requirement 5 and Requirement 12 include anti-phishing protections. I mean, you review the data from any of the major breaches recently, and you'll see that social engineering tactics are certainly a large component of that initial entry point for threat actors. Imagine you're at home and someone knocks on your door and says, "Oh, I can offer you a very cheap SIM card." I know sometimes cheaper, you think that may mean better, but we have to take that extra step to make sure that we verify that person is who they say they are, so that these phishing techniques that we receive via email aren't as effective. So there is a new control to ensure, a technical control to ensure that there's an automated mechanism to detect and protect against phishing attacks. There's also an awareness component to include phishing or anti-phishing tactics in your security awareness program. It's really about protecting your staff to make sure that there isn't that single point of failure with clicking that erroneous link. Requirement 6, as we know, introduced security controls around very, very common e-commerce skimming attacks, plaguing merchants at alarming rates. We know that a lot of organizations went to e-commerce, particularly with the pandemic, as mentioned by those before me earlier today, and stakeholders from all over the world provided us this very feedback. So the Council responded with 2 new requirements. And the evolution of artificial intelligence and its ability to generate malicious code on the fly is really a viable threat to security as well. And even if you as a merchant is loading a page from your payment service provider, you still may have responsibilities for this requirement. So PCI DSS in version 4.0.1 clarifies these 2 points here. So in requirement 6, that scripts that are script inventory must include a business or technical justification for its purpose. And in requirement 11, the alerts that are on changes for security impacting HTTP headers and the script content specifically of that payment page. So be sure to watch out for those clarifications made in version 4.0.1. And I'm often asked, why are these new requirements here? You know, what are all of these different scripts? And we like to think of it in terms of this story, so go with me. But first, what are scripts? Well, they are code loaded to your page. They are loaded either visual, different cosmetic components, but they can also be loaded in the form of chatbots, let's say, from your payment service provider. So back to this graphic. Imagine you're at a dinner party, and all of these people, each of these people at this table represent individual scripts that are rendered on your payment page. And these new payment page security controls are intended to monitor script traffic at the table, in and out of your home, let's say, to make sure that they're authorized. So the scripts that are there are those that should be there, and we know why they're there. And that integrity is maintained, so that the script that is sent is a script that is actually rendered on the payment page, and that there's alert generated if that script content somehow changes. You know, when you think of inviting people to your home, there's a very strict guest list, right? And why? Because you have a very high-profile guest coming to your home. And what is that? Your customer's payment data. So whether it's your page or whether it's being transmitted to a payment service provider's iframe that sits on your page, these new payment page controls are ultimately intended to prevent this. We all know those people that we wouldn't necessarily want to have at our home if we were to have a party. So we prevent the wrong people or the wrong scripts from getting into our home and mingling with our very special guest, our payment page details. These controls take a layered approach so that the guest list or the scripts are justified, integrity is maintained, and if the wrong people get into the party, there is an alert generated so you can get them out right away. And as I speak of this, I hope you can begin to see how the different layers begin to form and strengthen your security posture. Requirement 10 is about automated log reviews. So imagine every time the motion sensor in your backyard or your garden went off, you had to get up and run to go see if it was an animal eating through your garden yet again. You have to document these activity patterns and get alerts only on suspicious activity. And I say this because according to recent reports, the average mean time to identify a threat actor in your environment is well over 200 days. So managing logs and managing that activity and knowing when malicious activity is upcoming is very, very important. So establish log baselines on known patterns so that you are alerted on suspicious activity and you can act on that right away. And part of any dynamic, robust defense in depth strategy includes an increase in vulnerability remediation efforts. And so in addition to requiring external ASV scans, Requirement 11 now includes a control for authenticating your internal vulnerability scans. And so authenticating your scans means that you're logging into the internal system directly to see what the internal configurations or misconfigurations may be. You find more vulnerabilities like password policy violations or business or internal logic flaws. And also, these are the things that really grant threat actors additional or heightened privileges into your internal systems, so you want to remediate those as soon as possible. These scans are not just picking up vulnerabilities that are detectable from the outside or from the infrastructure layer. They are going inside of the system to find the truly impactful vulnerabilities. It's like if you were to inspect the safety of your home and just looking at the front of the doors to say, yep, my home is safe. Authenticated scans are like opening that door to see if there's a window open or if you have a pest eating problem eating through your carpet. Authenticated scans are to give you a more enhanced idea of your threat landscape. Why? So that you're able to prioritize your remediation efforts accordingly. But be prepared, when you do perform these internal authenticated scans, you may see just a few more vulnerabilities on your scan report. PCI DSS also includes a few more bits of flexibility that I want to take a moment to point out here. The first is via cryptographic agility. So there is a new requirement to ensure that there is an inventory of cryptographic cipher suites and protocols. And this helps to support your readiness in the age of quantum computing. And having this additional agility will help to separate organizations that are ready to adjust and update their algorithms quickly from those that cannot. Also, stakeholders wanted flexibility in how often they perform certain activities. So PCI DSS includes 9 requirements where a targeted risk analysis is required to determine the frequency of an activity. And I am often asked, well, can I perform a targeted risk analysis or a TRA in requirements that don't specifically require their use? And the answer is no. If a targeted risk analysis is specified in a requirement, that's where you can determine the frequency of an activity. But if a targeted risk analysis or a TRA is not, then that is not a requirement where a TRA is able to be used. Third-party service providers is a large area that we really work to develop in PCI DSS. And we know that relationship management is key. You share in the responsibility for activities with your service provider, and they have the responsibility to provide the products as advertised to you as well. But beyond that, there may be some additional responsibilities that you may not necessarily be aware of. So updates to the standard reflect this growing need, and to include how granular some of these third-party services can be. So there's a new requirement that mandates the support of customer requests for information on PCI DSS requirements. It's like, we liken it to if you're looking for insurance for your car or for your home. You want to look through that policy to make sure to see what your service provider will cover versus what you'll cover. And you'd likely want to know that before an accident takes place, just like your PCI DSS management with your service provider. And the last point I'd like to mention is multi-factor authentication. So we know that there is a new requirement that mandates multi-factor authentication for all non-console access into the CDE, and also a requirement for strong, properly configured MFA solution to really ensure the confidentiality of that environment. But PCI DSS version 4.0.1 introduces something new. And this is an example of where an applicability note was added to support some alternatives that our stakeholders told us are being used in the wild. And so we have MFAs required for all non-console access into the CDE. except if there are accounts authenticated with phishing-resistant authentication. And an example of that would be FIDO2. We have Mike Thompson. He'll be speaking about phishing-resistant authentication later on today. So if you're interested in the variety of those phishing-resistant authentication, please stay tuned for that presentation. But I thought it was important to add that here because it's a direct reflection of how we take stakeholder feedback that we receive directly and we make updates to our standard to allow that flexibility and to support the usability with our large stakeholder base. So ultimately, I really invite you to think of your organization or the organizations that you help to support as a global storage repository for all of our information. Not just your customers' information, but your own personal payment data. And PCI DSS represents that layered defense and depth approach, not unlike the ways that we secure the critical assets directly in our home. So we know the risks, and PCI DSS has provided these additional tools to help support or mitigate the likelihood of those risks impacting your environment. And we know that the 31st of March 2025 is right around the corner. But really, it's beyond the compliance of that. It is a security benefit to make sure that we are incorporating these new requirements into our environment as soon as possible to reduce the likelihood of threat actors gaining unauthorized access into our systems. So PCI DSS version 4.0.1 is this way. Let's join me and be part of the group taking the lead. Thank you.